Iboga, to me, is the universe. It's the entire universe. It's everything. It's infinite wisdom, infinite consciousness, and somehow or another, it knows everything about us. Basi. Just when we think it's not going to find this behavior, this thinking pattern, somehow it finds it all. Because Iboga is the truth hunter for the truth inside of us, as well as universal truth. Physically, it's the root of the tree. It's the second and third layer of the root bark, and so you shave the tree and you get the roots. And there's different ways to ingest it. You can make a tea out of it, which is quite delicious. It's a little bitter.
Delicious.
It's delicious.
It's going a little far.
Yeah, and then you can also put all the roots out on the ground, and you can mortar and pestle it. So you just hammer it so it turns into like wood chips. You can grind it up even more in like a coffee grinder and make it like a fine powder. And so here at Awaken Your Soul, we use the root bark, the natural root bark that we get from a village in Gabon, as well as I enjoy making the tea. Iboga comes from the jungle of Central West Africa, mainly in Gabon, parts of Cameroon, and also the Congo. So Central West Africa, Equatorial Africa, rainforest type environment, jungle type environment. No, Iboga is so different than all of the other psychedelics, all the other plant medicines, entheogens. And some of the indigenous people, the shamans over there, will say that the Iboga spirit knows all the other plants. And the first time that I heard that, I was like, no way. And now I understand the wisdom that they were sharing. It does, because if I do any other medicines, like ayahuasca, for example, Iboga is always there. And oftentimes people come to Awaken Your Soul and they've done ayahuasca, and the spirit of Iboga has shown up and called them in an ayahuasca ceremony. I've heard that before. So yeah, it's just the infinite wisdom. It just knows everything.
First, I think it's important to note that entheogen means of God. And so all of these beautiful animal and teacher plants, and then of course some that are synthesized in labs, the intentionality is to bring us back into alignment with our spirit and back into alignment with nature. Now, I would say gravitate far more towards, natural plant medicines, animal, like a 5-MeO-DMT or combo, but that all of their intentions is to remove the interference in the way of seeing our true nature, feeling more safe within ourselves, within our bodies, and more aligned and connected. Now, the difference in the way that they all teach is vast. It's very extreme. With Iboga and ayahuasca, for example, because this is a question that we get asked a lot, I think it's a very common one, because they are two master teachers that are very high up on the totem in terms of these entheogens. And ayahuasca, of course, is more well known, and Iboga has a more of an intense reputation for various reasons, which we can talk about in a minute. But as we've already talked about, Iboga is a root, and it takes us down into the root of who we are, into our early life experiences, our programming, how those elements are showing up in our adult lives, back into our ancestry. I mean, you can go generations and generations back sometimes in a journey to really see those patterns that are showing up in our current life, past lives as well, which we consider kind of the root of the soul's journey. And it really helps deconstruct these adaptations that our mind has created in order to feel safe. So from that space, it allows our mind to be more calm, us to be more in the driver's seat, to be less reactive, less dysregulated, to be more in our truth, in our essence, and our joy, and to learn to have a more open heart. There's a lot of beautiful ways that this medicine teaches, and to highlight the difference between Iboga and ayahuasca, Iboga is powerful enough that 1 or 2 ceremonies can create really profound lasting change that we see over and over and over again. You need far less Iboga than you would ayahuasca to receive a certain level of healing. Now, ayahuasca is a more communal spirit. She has a very feminine energy. Iboga has what we consider to be more of the perfect blend between masculine and feminine. Sometimes it definitely has a more stern masculine approach, but it also has a very beautiful, open, compassionate feminine energy. Ayahuasca can teach in a very confusing way sometimes. She is a vine, so the way that the wisdom is delivered can be kind of ethereal. It's very cosmic. She likes to heal in community as well, so we might be processing something for someone on a mattress next to us, which is beautiful, and it can also be very confusing because it's hard to differentiate our energy from somebody else's. And, you know, we just find, I mean, we've worked extensively with ayahuasca for many, many years, and 50 some odd ceremonies, you know, where Iboga can get to the root in 1 or 2 nights. So as powerful of a healer as she is, we don't believe that she has the ability to get quite as deep into the programming that Iboga does to create the kind of lasting change that a lot of us are seeking. So we will find that people have gone really deep with ayahuasca will come to us and say, I've had some really beautiful experiences, some beautiful healing and opening, but I'm really looking for more. And I believe that Iboga can help with that. And it's absolutely true. We see it time and time again.
Iboga and ayahuasca, something really interesting about whom is being called to Iboga. We find that ayahuasca is a beautiful medicine. We have a beautiful relationship with her. We don't serve it. We're not facilitators of that medicine, but we have a lot of experience with Aya. And the people that are being called to Iboga, there's just another level of depthness that they're looking for. There's answers that they're looking for that may not be accessible with other medicines. And this is one of the reasons why they're being called to work with the root, because they want to go further and further into the root of their being. So Iboga is the full natural root, right, of the tree. And inside that root and inside this medicine, there's alkaloids. Some will say 12, 13, who knows? There's a good amount of alkaloids, which are the healing properties of the medicine. One of the active ingredients, one of the active alkaloids is ibogaine. And if you extract ibogaine out of the iboga root, you can also extract it out of volcanga, which is another root in Central West Africa. And this specific alkaloid is very effective in blocking the opiate receptors in the brain and scrubbing the central nervous system. When it goes into the body, it converts to neuroibogaine in the brain, which blocks the opiate receptors. So there's a lot of clinics, like in Mexico, in Portugal, different parts of the world, that are working with this one alkaloid in a clinical setting to help people detoxify from opioids, fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, like heavy drugs that somebody potentially is physically addicted to. And so they can go to these clinics and use ibogaine.
You can synthesize ibogaine, whereas you cannot synthesize Iboga. So using it for detox purposes, especially given the level of the opioid crisis these days, makes a lot more sense to use something that can be made in a lab to help with these addictive properties and the detox with very minimal withdrawal. And then if people want to go on to explore what the driver is below the addictive behavior, because there's always pain underneath addiction. It's from a holistic process, you look at what is the behavior that is driving the addiction, not the addiction itself. So after someone has detoxed, then they can go on to use Iboga to help them discover it on a deeper level.
Let's see. Now, you can use the full natural Iboga root to detox people. You can do that. We don't do that at Awaken Your Soul. We believe it's best to use ibogaine and use it in the clinical setting, and also get it from volcanga, so you're protecting the Iboga. You're not just taking that alkaloid out and leaving the rest and not using it, wasting it essentially. So yes, you can use it to detox, but it's best to use ibogaine. And also, I've never used ibogaine. I've never experienced it. But from what I understand, it's not the full spirit of the plant, because you are extracting this one alkaloid out, so you're tampering with it, and you're not getting the full effect that you would get by using the natural Iboga root. So no, people that are physically dependent on pharmaceuticals, street drugs, opioids, fentanyl, all those things, cannot come to Awaken Your Soul to experience the full root. It's best for them to go to an ibogaine clinic, get the overall detoxification, mind, central nervous system, body, integrate for a few months, stay clean of the heavy toxic pharmaceuticals, the street drugs, and then come to Awaken Your Soul and experience the full natural root in a holistic, well-rounded wellness center. It all depends on what somebody's using, but typically 2-3 weeks or a month. It just depends. If somebody's using SSRIs, 5-6 days, 7 days. If somebody's using Klonopin, Xanax, so benzodiazepines, maybe like 10 days, 14 days. If somebody's using heroin, I would want them to be clean of heroin for at least 14 days, maybe 21 days. And I would also have to be connecting with them to see where they're at. See what type of personal work they've done, see if they can actually handle this experience only being separated from the opioids for 2 weeks. If somebody's physically dependent on hard alcohol, we can't serve them medicine because they can go into seizures. So they would have to be detoxified from physical alcohol to come and work with us. But if somebody's drinking wine or beer or even tequila, but can stop drinking for 7 days with no DTs, no withdrawals, no shakes, then it's safe to come. Lots of auditory hallucination. You know, your senses are really heightened. And so you can just be hearing all sorts of sounds, maybe people around you, maybe the tribe around you, and you can take your blindfold off and look, and no one's there. So auditory hallucinations, visions can happen, but that's not the end game. I know oftentimes people want to come to these medicines because they want to have this visionary experience, and that's part of it. And some people get them, and some people get really strong, vivid visions. So that's a part of it. Auditory, body sensation. There's a lot of healing that happens in the body, in the cellular memory of the body. So oftentimes people will vibrate. You know, they can shake. You know, like just kind of shaking energy out, possibly shaking some trauma out. They could feel warm.
Healing the central nervous system.
Healing the central nervous system. They could feel warm. They could feel cold. So sometimes we get extra blankets. There is purging that happens. You know, purging could be just shaking. Purging could be urinating. Purging can be, of course, going, you know, poo, as well as a vomit purge. But sometimes when people are vomiting, sometimes there's no substance coming out. It's actually just energy coming out of the body, which is really fascinating as well.
In terms of the mental process, you know, to his point about the visuals, they can actually be kind of distracting and somewhat chaotic. I mean, this medicine has a very interesting quality about the visuals. There's a lot of faces, there's a lot of cartoon characters, a lot of often very nonsensical stuff, which can be kind of distracting. Sometimes it will show our lives in a review, like on a movie screen, which of course is really poignant and important. But often the visuals are just chaos, you know, Daffy Duck and The Price is Right, or can-can dancers on a football field, or, you know, this is very common. I get a lot of visuals, and I'm cats everywhere. Just kind of like, okay, enough already. Let's get to the real stuff. So really the magic of how this medicine really impacts us. I mean, all of that is important, and it's cleaning and detoxifying. It's moving all of this stored data out of our hard drive, you know, out of our subconscious mind. So it's all valuable, but where you really start to perceive how this medicine is working is that it changes the way that we think. So we'll start to see a part of our lives and we'll just see it in truth and clarity. We'll see the way that we're behaving. We'll see the way that we have changed in order to adapt to early life experiences that's maybe impacting our current life in a negative way. We'll see the truth of the nature of our partnership maybe, and how, you know, our husband or wife is showing up in a way that just is not in alignment, and things that we have not been able to see very clearly for a long time. It also, one of the more adept ways that it teaches, and probably one of the more uncomfortable ways that it teaches, is that it will take an emotion or a behavior that we have, for example, fear, rage, depression, anxiety, self-loathing, lack of you know, vulnerability or judgment, and it will turn up the dial and amplify, let's just say anxiety, for example, to where it is so strong that that's all that we can experience, and like no thoughts can penetrate it. And the metaphor that I give to people a lot is that if you were to take a bottle from the bottom of a river, or the bottom of a lake, let's say it's been there for many years and it's full of a bunch of sand and algae and just stuff that you don't want in there, and you turn it upside down, all of that sediment is going to be packed into the top of the bottle or the bottom of the bottle, and it's not going to come out. You actually have to shake it up in order for it to release and come out. So this is what Iboga can do with these thoughts, feelings, and behaviors as it's clearing it out. So not only is it allowing us to see it more clearly, the way that we're probably operating below our direct consciousness often, you know, this voice that we hear, the self-loathing voice, like it will turn up the dial, and then we notice like, oh my God, I'm thinking that way all the time. I'm just not tuned into it because I'm so used to it. But then it's also purging it out. And then in the days and weeks to come, we'll find that aspect of our behavior is not nearly as strong as it was. And so we see that often. It's one of the most beautiful and powerful ways that this medicine works, but it can be uncomfortable. So I would say that's one of the clearest effects that this medicine can have.
Yeah, also it's important for the collective to understand, you know, whomever's being called to this medicine, that Iboga wants to highlight and showcase all of the beauty in your life, all of your creativity, all of your passions, all of your inspiration, what it is that lights you up, all of the incredible gifts along this beautiful journey that you've had. It wants to really showcase that and connect you back to the remembrance of that. It's not only about, you know, Iboga finding some of the tougher, denser, darker parts of us, because we're dark, light, and everything in between. And so the medicine wants to showcase all of it, right? Oftentimes we see people coming in here really afraid that they're going to get their ass handed to them or something like that, and the medicine holds them and hugs them and nourishes them and says, hey, you remember this part of your life? You remember this? You remember your child?
Celebrate yourself.
Yeah, let's celebrate your life. And because Iboga can be really cheeky as well. It's another effect of the medicine. It likes to laugh. It likes to have fun. And we see that often in our own practice with the medicine, laughing lots, and also with the guests, you know, having a really funny part of their journey at times.
Yeah, it's got some great one-liners, this medicine. Like, it's simple, clear, direct, and to the point. Just like a laser, in ways that, you know, someone that maybe is struggling, and Iboga will throw up just a one-liner that'll make someone just like chuckle and be like, oh my God, you're so right. And we see that time and time again. It's just, it has a really special personality that way that is quite fun.
Bossy. Which, when you think about it, the effects of Iboga, everything that it's affecting is already inside of you. Some of it could be repressed or suppressed, but it's all inside of you. So the joy, the laughter, the sadness, the anger, it's just the medicine bringing it up for us to be with, essentially. Not to be of resistance to, not to fight with, just to be with and learn to hold the emotion, or the life experience. Basi.
Yao yao.
Yao yao.
Yeah, for sure. It's totally possible that it can be intense, and it doesn't have to be. If someone comes and they're really ready and they want to go deep and they want to take a lot of medicine, that doesn't mean that a lot of medicine equals intense necessarily. There's a higher chance of intensity the more medicine that you take. But really, what will ignite the intensity often is when we're at resistance to what the medicine wants to show us. Now, that doesn't mean that if someone is like, okay, I'm willing to see all of this stuff, I'm not going to be at resistance, that the medicine won't be intense, because it does have that possibility. And it's important to remember that this medicine wants to connect us back to the God within us. It wants us to be in love, in our creativity, in our worth, in harmony with nature. And sometimes the intensity is necessary in order to clear the space for those things to really express themselves. But some people come here and they have a really beautiful, blissful experience. It might last a long time. If we enter the ceremony at 9 o'clock, take the medicine at 10 o'clock, typically people don't sleep until the following night. Sometimes people don't sleep that night. I would say it's probably 70-30. And sleep is really what marks sort of the ending of that part of the process. But when people really struggle and suffer is when they don't want to commune with what the medicine is trying to teach them. So if people can keep in mind that the level of healing that's available in a very short period of time, that might require some intensity, but seeing the massive effects that we receive afterwards, it becomes that much easier. And so after someone has experienced this medicine, even if it's just one ceremony and they go into the integration days, there's essentially 3 integration days between the 2 ceremonies, and 2 is more than enough, trust me. They go into the second one with a lot more trust. If people experience a retreat, they go home, they integrate, and then they come back, they're like, the intensity is like, doesn't matter if it needs to teach that way, because they have so much reverence and value for the incredible amount of wisdom and clearing and evolution that is possible with just one ceremony.
Yes, and in life, when we have been uncomfortable and we have been challenged and the universe has been intense and everything's been intense around us, this is where the profound growth happens. Growth also happens too when it's not intense. But in my experience, the deeper I've gone in the discomfort, the more comfortable I have gotten with my life. So if it's going to be intense, allow it. If it's going to be rainbows and unicorns, allow it. Just allow the medicine to do what it needs to do, because it's the medicine and your soul. And together they design the ceremony and the experience and the journey with this medicine here at Awaken Your Soul in Costa Rica, and then in the integration process. Just allow it to be.